staging a long march across California from LA to Sacramento with 99 Rise, a visionary young leader who is every bit the New Hampshire Rebel and has in fact logged his many miles with the New Hampshire Rebellion here, and who will speak to us about what we are excited to partner with as the continuation of this rebellion as we go far beyond New Hampshire in the months ahead, because of course this is a critical election year in which we must elect not just a president but a Congress ready to implement our We the People agenda. So please join me in welcoming, to kick off our final session, Kai Newkirk from 99 Rise.
How's everybody doing?
Woo!
Do we have some rebels in the house? I came up here from DC. I wanted to see some rebels, so that's good to know. Just want to get this out of the way. I'm with Bernie Sanders, so if you live in New Hampshire, I hope you're going to vote for him. But that's personal. That's not what I'm here to talk to you about right now. I'm here because I want to tell you all about something that I believe is going to be historic and can change the course of history in our country. And I want to ask you to go to jail with me for justice, and to march with me for justice. But first I want to say it's an honor to speak after Marianne. She's a new friend and an inspiration to me. Yeah, another round. It's good to be here for me on a Sunday, because this is kind of a church for me, right? We are a community that's brought together by a sacred cause, a belief in the fundamental equality of persons, that no matter the circumstances of our birth, no matter our class, our race, our sex, anything about us, that we are entitled by birth to an equal voice, an equal say in our government, and thus an equal ability to create the rules by which we live in a society that gives us an equal chance to fulfill our God-given potential. And as Marianne talked about, we've never as America been true to that. We have never yet realized the promise of democracy. Do you understand that? Are we in agreement on that? I hope so. But through generations of struggle, we've shed blood, sweat, and tears, right, to draw closer to that, ever closer to that. And to me, that is a sacred duty and a responsibility that we carry forward, and we carry forward it in our time. And so it's good for me to be in community with you all here today. And I think also something that defines the New Hampshire Rebellion as a community is a belief in the power of sacrifice. A belief in the necessity and the power of personal sacrifice, collective sacrifice for the common good. You know, Granny D is sort of the spiritual founder of the New Hampshire Rebellion. And when I think about what she did, it exemplifies that. When I think about the first days of the march, I came up on the first march in 2014. And walking through the cold in January in New Hampshire in the White Mountains, there was a sense, right, that we're making this collective sacrifice, but we were doing so for the common good, and that's why people would come out onto the street to see what we were doing. That's why the local press wanted to come out, because it wasn't just that we had an idea, we were willing to make a sacrifice for it, and that made it important. And I think that's important because we're called to do that at this time. Was anybody here yesterday when Lawrence Lessig spoke? And hands up for Brother Lessig. I believe the man who was honored after him, they both talked about having a faith that we're going to get to victory in this fight, that we are going to win fundamental reform of the way that we fund elections. But he wasn't sure, are we in Arizona or Ohio, using the metaphor of Granny D's march, right? The brother that was honored said, you know, we're going to get there, but not sure when. Well, I want to speak today to what I think is an important truth that we have to reckon with. And that's the truth that we can't wait. Martin Luther King Jr. in the March on Washington, his famous I Have a Dream speech, right? He spoke about the fierce urgency of now. And in some ways that's always true, right? There's always somebody suffering that we need to be there for, we need to make a difference for. But right now we're faced with a very particular situation, I think, in our country. Because we know that the urgent problems that we face as a country cannot be fully solved unless we win on this fight and save our democracy and fix our democracy first, correct? And so we know that those folks that can't wait, the folks that are hurting in our country can't wait 5 years, can't wait 10 years for us to win this fight. The people in the next Flint, okay, the people whose pipes also have lead in them and whose government also doesn't respect them because they don't have money or because they're black, they can't wait for us 5-10 years down the road to win a government that's going to represent them. Okay, the folks that are incarcerated in our country because we have a government that is more responsive to the money from private prisons than the needs of everyday families, they can't wait for change, right? Our planet can't wait. We are in a planetary emergency. The smartest people on Earth are telling everybody else on Earth who will listen that yesterday, 5 years from now, we needed a World War II scale mobilization to switch the world to clean energy, right? And that's not happening when Wall Street and fossil fuel companies have so much power in our government that they can even stop a conversation about the reforms that we need. So we cannot afford to wait. We have to embrace this truth, however painful it is, however daunting it is, that we have to somehow summon the ability. We have to see a way to win change in the very near future. And so I want to say that we have to be willing to dream a dream that's big enough that if we fulfilled it, it could make it possible to win reform in the near future, reform in the next year. And I believe that Democracy Spring could be that dream. That's what I want to tell you about and ask you to be part of. Because we're in a moment in this country when the realization of the crisis that our democracy is becoming increasingly widespread. From the Bernie campaign to Trump, we see that people are looking for something that's going to really challenge the establishment. But I think we have to reckon with something. No matter who you support, whether you're with Bernie, with Jill Stein, the Republican candidate, no presidential campaign is going to be enough. Okay, even Bernie's saying this, not me, us, right? We need a movement that's going to force change. It's not just that we have to win in Congress, but we need a movement that's going to push Congress to act. And I think this growing recognition in the public, this sense that our government has abandoned us, is a kind of potential, it's a tinder that's in the body politic that we have to set fire to. We need a match that's going to do that. We need to do something historic. We need to intervene in the business of usual in this election cycle and force a conversation that no one can ignore and win change. So how do we do that? Anybody have any ideas? If you read history, you'll see, in my view, that all the fundamental struggles in our country that have advanced democratic progress, we have never moved forward in them without mass nonviolent action. Okay? Let's talk about slavery, talk about the abolition movement. Let's talk about women winning the right to vote and the women's suffrage movement, people that put their bodies and their freedom on the line. Let's talk about the early union movement that won the right to an 8-hour workday, a 40-hour work week, the right to have a union. Let's talk about the civil rights movement. Every fundamental struggle, unless people were willing to take this kind of step, we did not advance forward. So why would this fight be any different? Why would this fight be any different? We have to learn from history and apply those lessons today. And so this is our time, and we have to be willing to step up. So this April, we're going to do something that's going to be historic. And I want to ask you all to march with me. I want to ask you to be willing to go to jail for justice with me. This is going to be one of the largest civil disobedience actions in the history of this country and in this generation. It's going to start on April 2nd, 55 days from now, in Philadelphia. That's right. In the spirit of the New Hampshire Rebellion, in the spirit of Granny D, in the spirit of the Selma to Montgomery March, in the spirit of the Farm Worker Pilgrimage, 1966, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, we're going to march. We're going to start in Philadelphia. We're going to gather at the Liberty Bell, which is symbolic, I believe, of our aspirations to democracy as a people. We're going to gather there. There will be people from all across this country. And we're going to issue a simple demand to Congress that they listen to the vast majority of the people in our country and take immediate action to end the corruption of big money in politics and ensure that we have free and fair elections that give everyone an equal voice regardless of wealth. That's a simple demand, right? Yeah. That's just saying to them that they have to do their jobs. We have to remember that despite the low expectations that we have of a corrupt Congress, especially with this unfortunate present Republican leadership, that their job is to actually do our will and listen to the people. And there's a clear supermajority in this country that wants action on this right now, and they should do that job. So we're going to call on them to do so. And we're going to point to 4 bills that are on the table right now, steps that they could take that would make a fundamental difference, that would make significant change. But we're not just going to do a dramatic petition, okay? We're not just going to stand up there and say it instead of clicking, sending our email in, right? We're going to be willing to do more than that. We're going to say we're going to march. We're going to walk 140 miles, 10 days, down to D.C., and we're going to make it clear that when we arrive on April 11th, if Congress has not come to its senses and listened to the people and taken action, we will have no choice but to sit in and reclaim the People's House in a mass nonviolent sit-in.
Woo!
That's right. That's right. You guys are going to be with us. And we're going to give Congress a choice. Okay, you can listen to the people, you can do your job, or you better be prepared to send hundreds and thousands of American citizens, patriotic defenders of democracy, to jail day after day. And we are going to sit in for at least a week every day on the grounds of the Capitol, in the rotunda, in the visitor center, in the offices, every day, simply putting our bodies in the way of this system of corruption and saying, it might carry on, but not without my resistance. I am here to reclaim the People's House. You're going to do your job, or you're going to have to send me to jail. And if, brothers and sisters, my friends, if they are sending hundreds of people, thousands over the course of those days to jail, the attention of our country, and even the world potentially, will be focused on this problem as never before. Imagine, do you remember Wisconsin in 2011? Anybody remember what was happening there when people were sitting in? Anybody ever heard of something called Occupy Wall Street? Yeah? There would be no Bernie Sanders campaign if it wasn't for Occupy Wall Street. There would be no minimum wage increases that are passing across the country. There would be no fights for 15. There would be no Republican candidates saying, oh, economic inequality, I care about that too, without Occupy Wall Street. Because it moved the public, it changed the conversation in this country, it made that cause sacred, it mobilized the minds and hearts of millions of people. We need to create a moment like that in this fight. And this will be that moment. And when we do that, in the middle of a hotly contested presidential primary, right? In the middle of this election, not the year before, but in the middle of it, it is going to create a moment in this country that can shift the future, that will focus the attention, the hearts and mind of the people in our nation on this problem like never before, that will focus on the crisis of this corruption. Not just as something you get asked about in a poll. Do you agree there's too much money in politics? Yes. No, it's going to be on TV, it's going to be on your Facebook feed, it's going to be in a conversation. Have you heard about what's happening? Have you heard about all these people at our Capitol that are being sent to jail? Do you stand with them? People are going to have to take a side. Just as members of Congress have to decide, are they going to be defenders of the status quo of corruption and stand with big money, or stand with democracy and the people? Folks in our country are going to feel moved to take a side, and you know what? Who are they going to stand with? They already know what they believe about this issue. And when we are nonviolent and we lead with our hearts and we stand in the tradition of the civil rights movement, they will stand with us, and we will awaken the sleeping giant of folks in this country in the middle of this election and force this fight, force this question into the heart of this election narrative and make it a referendum on whether we're going to have a democracy or a plutocracy in this country. And I know that the people will stand with us, and that's a referendum we can win and make a mandate for reform in 2017. Do you believe that? Because I'll tell you, if you're not sure whether you believe it or not, you better come up with a better idea, because we need to dream a dream big enough that can open the way to reform. We need to have a plan. We can't wait. We can't wait for 2020 and redistricting and hope, oh, maybe we can take Congress back or something like that. No. We need to have a way to stand up now and change the course of history, right? And when people face moments like this in the past, these are the kind of choices that they made. These are the kind of steps that they took. And when I stand up here and invite you to be part of this, I'm not doing so alone, okay? There are almost 2,000 people who've already pledged that they will risk arrest and stand with us in Washington, D.C. Some of them are your friends and heroes. Lawrence Lesser, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, Ben Cohen from Ben & Jerry's and Stampede, Zephyr Teachout. Anybody heard of Mark Ruffalo, the actor? The Incredible Hulk is with us. Gabby Hoffman, the actor. Leaders from the millennial movements that are leading the fight for justice in our country. Carlos Saavedra, leader in the immigrant rights movement. Cosecha. Wumi Sela from the Dream Defenders. And then leading Stamp from Rise Up Georgia. Dante Berry from Million Hoodies. This is going to be a coming together of many streams that are fighting for justice in our country into a mighty river that I believe is going to change the course of history. and I want you all to be part of it. There's over 85 organizations that have signed up to be part of this, okay? A coalition is coming together, and we have allies that are planning a large permitted rally to conclude all this on the 17th, on that Sunday in DC. Many other organizations in the Democracy Awakening are coming together. So if you've been dreaming, right, about what it could look like and what it would mean for us to be able to overcome the sense of frustration and resignation that we often face in this fight, if we could do something that would waken people's hearts up, right, that would make this a conversation that was burning in people's minds, right, that would inspire people to hope and to feel empowered that we could stand in the way of this corrupt system and stop it in its tracks and force them to respond. Even in this case, if we don't expect Congress is going to pass any bills, don't think that we're crazy in planning this, although we will celebrate that miracle, okay? And we'll say, great, we showed up in DC and you did the right thing. All right, let's have a party. Come on, shake my hand, Paul Ryan. I believe in the redemptive potential of every person, right? That's one thing I get from Marianne. But we're not going to be naive either. We're not going to be naive. We can't afford that. So there's a victory, whether they act or not, because if they don't and they refuse and they send everyone to jail, and the largest civil disobedience in a generation in a country, a generation in our country, it will send an unmistakable message across this country, okay? That this corruption is real, okay? That it's entrenched, that Congress, rather than responding, would send people to jail, that solutions are on the table, okay? And that we need a new Congress that will act, and that there is a movement rising in this country that will demand it no matter what it takes, okay? And when we send that message, it will change everything, and we will be able to rock this election and create a mandate and build a movement that can enforce that mandate and win reform in 2017 or the near future. I believe that's possible. And so I want to ask you to join me and say that I know this won't be easy, right? You know, we don't have any illusions. I know that it's scary. Has anyone ever gone to jail for justice before in this room? There's a few hands. All right, let's give it up for those people. Has anyone ever thought about doing something like that? Has anyone ever dreamed? Okay, maybe. All right, let's give a hand to those people. All right? And I want to tell you, there's a power, right, when we sacrifice for the common good, okay? Gandhi called it soul force. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about redemptive suffering, right? And don't let anybody tell you, right, that it's too hard, right, or it's too scary, right? If you can see this vision with me right now, if you can imagine what will it be like in the heart of this election when people are sitting in and occupying in the capital of the United States of America around this issue and forcing Congress to take a stand, right? Day after day when hundreds of people are going to jail, what would that be like? If you can imagine that moment, then don't let anybody tell you, right, that it's too hard, that it's too scary. Because I know the story of Selma, right? I know the story of people who marched from Selma to Montgomery and crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, okay? And took the lumps for that, okay? Don't let anybody tell you you're too old, because you know the story of Granny D, right? How old was she when she started that march? 88, 89. She was up there, right? Don't let anybody tell you you're too young, because I know the story, and you should know the story if you don't, of Birmingham, when children, okay, school children went out and marched and faced the dogs and the fire hoses and went to jail, right? Don't anybody tell you that there's too much to risk, okay? It's too much. When I know the story of the dreamers, young undocumented folks in our country who went and sat in at the Senate, even though they knew they might risk deportation and be separated from their families. And don't let anybody tell you that you don't have enough to fight for, there's not enough to dream for. Because let me tell you, brothers and sisters, everything that you love, everything that you care about, the people that you love, the places, the principles of this country, this very planet is at risk unless we move forward and win this fight now and have a government that will respond to the needs and the dreams, the hopes, aspirations of the people in this country and not just the 1%. So we have too much to fight for and too much strength that is in us. It's who we are as American people to turn back now. So I want to encourage you to believe in the potential that you have to be part of this fight and to join us. Is anybody ready to do that?
Yes!
This rebel spirit is strong. I want to say, if you believe that there's hope for our nation, right? If you believe that our future and our freedom are worth fighting for, if you really love this country, Now is the time to dream a historic dream. Now is the time to commit that you will join us in Philadelphia, and that you will march, that you will join us in Washington, D.C., and that you will sit in. And that you, by the power that's given to you in your body, right, to follow your conscience, no matter how hard it is, not to be afraid, that when we stand together, nothing is impossible, nothing can stop us, and we can make of this long winter of corruption in our country a new spring for democracy, a new day in this country. If you believe in it, I want you to join us in Philadelphia. I want you to be there with us in D.C. I want you to stand with us to bring spring for democracy in this country today. Will you be with us? Thank you all. I'm going to hang out here for a little bit, talk to you, answer questions. I got my man Dylan here. We're going to organize, we're going to build together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you. And it's going to be a long walk. We're going to continue it, so you'll need some water, stay hydrated.
You know, I was hoping I was going to get this water down.
A little sweet to keep up the energy.